So apparently, I need to start listening to my own podcast. I know, not exactly the revelation you were expecting today. But earlier this week, I was on a work call when one of the women looked at me and said, Kristen, you need to give yourself some grace. And I laughed. Because if you've listened to the show for more than 5 minutes, you know I've probably said those exact words myself at least 20 times. Yet somehow, I wasn't taking a bit of my own advice. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that this wasn't a one time thing. I do this all the time, which got me thinking, why are we so good at giving advice and so terrible at taking it ourselves? Welcome back to Fit Fuel Female. Today we're talking about the advice we give, because apparently I'm really good at dishing it out. But taking it, that's a completely different story. I know the words, I've said the words, I've practically trademarked the words. And yet somehow here I was needing someone else to hand my own advice right back to me. Seriously. I mean, if my best friend calls me and describes my exact situation, I'd have her life figured out in like 5 minutes. I'd be like, girl, breathe. You're doing great. Stop putting so much pressure on yourself. Trust the process. Get some sleep. Have a margarita. Done. Problem solved. Yet when it's my own life, suddenly I need 17 business days, a spreadsheet, 3 conversations, a prayer journal, a podcast episode, and a sign from God delivered via carrier pigeon before I can make a decision. Make it make sense, please. And the more I thought about it, the more examples I came up with. I tell people not to compare themselves to others. Then I open Instagram. I tell women to prioritize sleep. Then I find myself folding laundry at 10:30 at night because apparently that's when my brain decides we should reorganize the entire house. I tell people done is better than perfect. Then I spend 20 minutes rewriting a text message that says, sounds good. I tell women to ask for help. Then I try to carry every grocery bag from the car in one trip like I'm training from the Olympics. And my personal favorite, I tell people to trust God. Then immediately, I start suggesting alternative plans to him. Like, God, I trust you completely, but like, just in case you haven't considered this, I have a few thoughts. I mean, honestly, the advice isn't the problem. The problem is that we stop following it. And here's the thing. A week earlier, if someone had told me a PR firm was going to discover my podcast, reach out to me, ask questions, and want to learn more, I would have been thrilled and I probably wouldn't have believed them. I probably would have said, that's cool. Is it true? Because let's be honest, there are still plenty of days where I feel like I'm just a working mom sitting in a spare bedroom talking into a microphone before sunrise. So when they reached out, I was excited. Not because I had some grand plan, not because I was looking for representation, but because someone found me. Someone found this little thing that I've been building every Tuesday morning before the sun comes up. Someone thought it was interesting enough to reach out. And that felt pretty cool. We exchanged a few emails, they asked some questions, I sent information, and then they passed. Now, technically, it was a very nice response. Professional, polite, lots of words. But ladies, we've all been around long enough to know a thanks but no thanks when we see one. And the funny thing is, the moment they passed, I completely skipped over the part where I had already gotten something I never even expected in the first place. Someone found me. Instead, I went straight to focusing on the one thing that didn't happen. Isn't that what we always do? We get the opportunity but focus on the rejection. We get the compliment but obsess over the criticism. We make progress, but we only see the gaps. And as I replayed the whole thing in my head, I realized I already knew exactly what advice I would have given to somebody else. Just keep going. One person's opinion doesn't define your worth. Don't let a single outcome determine how you feel about what you're building. All things I genuinely believe, all things I would have told a friend, yet somehow I wasn't taking any of it myself. In fact, I did this again last weekend. My husband and I were headed to date night, and it starts absolutely pouring rain. Now, before I continue, you need to understand something very particular about me. I hate umbrellas. I don't use umbrellas. I think they're inconvenient. I think they're annoying. I think a wet umbrella sitting next to a dinner table is gross. I also think they get left behind everywhere. And don't even get me started on sharing an umbrella. There is nothing natural about two adults trying to synchronize their walking pace under one tiny umbrella. One person is always getting wet. Usually, both people are getting wet. It's chaos. So, we're headed to dinner, it's raining, and we have to park pretty far away. My husband, being the reasonable person in the relationship, offers to drop me off at the front. And I'm like, no, I'm good. I can walk. It's fine. I don't melt in the rain. I'll survive. Now, here's the important detail. I happen to be wearing a brand new pair of Gucci shoes. And while I may be willing to get wet, the Gucci's did not sign up for this experience. So my husband grabs the umbrella, not because he thinks he's going to win the argument. He knows me way better than that. He simply just lets me do my thing, lets me make my speech that he's heard 1,000 times before, lets me explain again why umbrellas are terrible, lets me confidently march toward the restaurant in the rain. And then about halfway there, he casually moves the umbrella over me. No discussion, no I told you so, no debate. Just quietly places the umbrella over my head because he already knows what's about to happen. And sure enough, 30 seconds later, there I am walking under the umbrella, protecting the Gucci's, accepting the help, pretending that this was my idea the entire time. And honestly, that's exactly what happened on that work call, too. The advice was the umbrella. I already knew it was the right answer. I just didn't want it. I wanted to keep pushing. I wanted to keep carrying it all. I wanted to keep proving that I could do it myself until someone gently moved the umbrella over my head and reminded me that maybe I didn't have to stand in the rain. And maybe why this topic, maybe it's why it's been sitting with me all week. Because the more I thought about it, the more I realized that advice has been finding me from every direction lately. A woman on a work call telling me to give myself some grace. My husband quietly holding an umbrella over my head while I insisted I didn't need one. Friends reminding me to breathe. People encouraging me to trust the process. And then there's this Bible study. I'm in the middle of a 6-week study on David right now, and every single week I sit down and laugh because I swear God specifically put my butt in that seat at church because he knows I need that story. Every week, without fail. There's some lesson, some reminder, some truth that feels uncomfortably relevant to whatever I'm wrestling with in the moment. And what's funny? I've spent a lot of time lately asking God to talk to me. Show me the path, give me the direction, tell me what to do, give me a sign. And maybe the problem, maybe it isn't that he's not talking. Maybe the problem is that I'm expecting him to speak in some giant, unmistakable, movie-worthy moment. Meanwhile, he's been talking all along. Through people, through conversations, through opportunities, through disappointments, through a Bible study, through a husband carrying an umbrella, through a woman on a work call, through advice I've probably already heard 12 times. Maybe God has been placing umbrellas in front of me all week, and I've just been standing there explaining why I don't need one. Because if I'm being honest, the advice I've needed lately hasn't been complicated. Slow down. Give yourself grace. Trust me. I put you here for a reason. Keep going. That's it. Simple. Not always easy, but simple. And maybe that's true for you too. Maybe there's a piece of advice that keeps showing up in your life. Maybe a friend said it. Maybe your spouse said it. Maybe your pastor said it. Maybe you heard it in a podcast. Maybe you've even said it yourself. The same message, the same reminder, the same lesson, showing up over and over again. What if that's not a coincidence? What if that's your umbrella? What if that's God trying to get your attention? What if the answer you've been asking for is already sitting right in front of you? For me, this week it was grace. Not because I've never heard the advice before, because I finally needed to take it. So, as you head into this week, pay attention to what keeps showing up. Pay attention to the people God places in your path. Pay attention to the conversations that linger. Pay attention to the advice that keeps finding you. And if someone who loves you hands you an umbrella, girl, stop standing in the rain. Before we wrap up, I want to get into this week's power move. I want you to ask yourself one simple question. What advice am I giving that I probably need to take myself? Think about it. What's the one thing you've been telling other people lately? Maybe you've been telling someone to give themselves grace. Maybe you've been encouraging a friend to take a chance. Maybe you've been reminding someone to ask for help. Maybe you've been telling someone to stop worrying about the things they can't control. Maybe you've been encouraging someone to trust God and trust the process. Now ask yourself, are you doing it? Because chances are, the advice that's been coming out of your mouth lately, it isn't random. It might also be the exact lesson that you're meant to learn from too. So this week, instead of just giving the advice, take it. Even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's hard, even if you're so stubborn and standing in the rain arguing with that umbrella, take your own advice. You might be surprised by how much you actually need it. Now, what's been fueling me? Reflection. Honestly, I think it's because this week I haven't been in the best headspace. I've been battling a lot in my mind, questioning things, overthinking things, worrying about things, taking one comment, one outcome, one situation, and letting it occupy way more space in my head than it deserves. And if I'm being honest, there have been moments this week where I felt the enemy just working overtime. You know, those weeks where every insecurity suddenly has a microphone? Every doubt gets louder, every fear gets more believable, every setback feels bigger than it actually is. I've had a lot of that this week. And at one point, I found myself praying, God, please help me clear my head. Help me hear you. Help me let go of what I'm not meant to carry. And what's interesting is that when I look back on the week, I think He answered. Not through some giant revelation, not through a flashing sign, but through reflection, through a conversation at work, through my husband, through a Bible study, through moments that seemed completely unrelated until I stopped long enough to connect the dots. And what I realized is that maybe God, maybe He has been speaking to me all week. Maybe I wasn't just moving too fast or thinking too loudly to hear Him. So what's been fueling me this week is taking a step back and reflecting, looking for the lesson, looking for the thread, looking for the ways God might be speaking through the people and moments He's placed right in front of me. Because sometimes that answer isn't hidden. Sometimes it's the advice you've been hearing all along. So as you head into this week, pay attention. Pay attention to the conversations that stick with you, the advice that keeps showing up, to the people God places in your path. And ask yourself, what advice am I giving that I need to take myself? Because sometimes the lesson isn't something new. Sometimes it's actually something you've known all along. You just finally decided to listen. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. Remember, please like, share, and subscribe. It keeps this message going to people who really need to hear it. Stay fit, stay fueled, and stay open to the lessons that might be right in front of you. I can't wait to see you next time.